So, hello, my name is Kassondra, and I'm here to talk about toxic tap water in Flint, Michigan, which is something that some of you may have heard about. So, a little bit of background. Flint, Michigan is located in the central area of the state and has a population of about 100,000 people. And to put that in perspective, that's about the size of Albany, New York. And they have been impoverished for a really long time. About half of their residents are below the poverty line, and in 2014, they actually had to claim an economic state of emergency. So during this time, they appointed a financial advisor who ended up making this decision to change their water source. So they had been supplied by the Detroit Water and Sewer Department, and they were switching to the KWA, and this would save them roughly $7 million. However, they had to make a few changes in order to switch to KWA. So they had to go to the backup, which is Flint River. So on the top, you see Lake Huron, which is what they would be supplied by with KWA. In the meantime, they're being supplied by the Flint River. And based on the facts that are going to pop up, you can see why most of the people living in Flint thought that this was a joke. They didn't take the government seriously when they said that they were going to use this as their water supply. So the Flint River, highly corroded, highly polluted, has iron concentrations 19 times more corrosive than the picture above. They also have high chloride ions because the salt from the roads goes into the Flint River. And so when you mix this iron and chloride concentration with lead pipes, which is what Flint uses for their water, you get really toxic water. And so in 2011, there was actually a study done that tested the Flint water in case ever they needed to use it. And it was found that if it was ever used for drinking water, there needed to be an anti-corrosive agent used that would cost $100 a day. So this all being about saving money, they didn't use it. And using that anti-corrosive agent would have actually prevented 90% of issues that happened. So there you can see the lead pipes that corroded. And now we're going to get into talking about taps. So when this first fact pops up, I want you to keep 15 parts per billion in your head. That's how much lead is safe in water. Safe. Lead is not safe at all. But that's how much the state would allow. And levels were found to be as high as 13,000 parts per billion in Flint toxic water. 3 public schools in Flint have consistent levels of over 100 parts per billion, and they're averaging 27 parts per billion. And there's a really good picture of what water they're using. So when the schools were actually found to have this high level of toxicity, that's when Flint decided to declare a public health emergency. Right, so that seems pretty straightforward. And then President Obama actually continued and declared it a federal state of emergency, declaring that the Flint water was unsafe to drink. So, like I said, no level of lead is safe in the body. It's asymptomatic. So the people who have been exposed to lead don't show symptoms. No one knows that they're exposed to lead, except that their blood will show signs of lead. The problem with that is that lead in the body decreases after 30 days. So being able to track how many people have been exposed to lead has been really, really hard. And on the bottom, you'll see that it's more dangerous for kids than adults. And this is really the focus of my research. So kids have a lower tolerance for lead, and tolerance really loosely because the body does not respond to lead in a positive way at all. But the neurological effects on kids begin at a lower exposure rate, and they're much more severe because the brain is not developed in kids. So moving forward with that, this is a list of all of the neurological deficits that are going to be faced by the kids who are growing up in Flint right now. So as I said, in 2014, the economic situation was announced, and that's when the water switched. But they were actually exposed to toxic water for 18 months before anyone acknowledged that it was not a good situation. So kids have a chance for lower IQs, developmental delays, behavioral problems like antisocial patterns, speech issues, ADHD, criminality. Adults face things like anemia, hypertension, and renal impairment. But as you can see, the neurological impact on youth is devastating, and it's 100% irreversible. So you can see the numbers too, that the amount of kids that are showing this high toxicity in their blood is going through the roof. And so moving forward, how is this going to affect society? Chelation therapy has been briefly discussed, but chelation therapy actually strips the body of lead. So when you've been exposed to lead for 18 months, it really doesn't do you any good. They've talked about changing the diets, but once the brain damages, we all know that it doesn't really come back from that. So they actually found recently too that contamination has gotten into sperm and eggs. So you're looking at a multi-generational impact on the city and all of its inhabitants. With the faulty water, the state issued filters for all the residents of Flint when they realized that it was a serious issue, but the filters have failed. That's a really recent fact. So society has to adjust, and it'll ask that the government of Flint issues remedial education, specialized programs, early intervention, and replacing the lead pipes. So you can't see the figure, but I'm sure some of you are like, well, why don't we just replace the pipes? That'll cost $1.5 billion. So it's a really big budgetary issue in Flint right now, especially considering that this all happened because they were trying to save money. And so why is this important? Well, people are being poisoned. And lead is all around us. I think that we all have heard, oh, well, lead's in the water. And this isn't just a little bit of lead. Like one time they had lead in their water and they drank it. This is 18 months, almost 2 years now, of potent lead poisoning. And it's a potent neurotoxin. It's 100,000 people. That's roughly 9,000 kids that are going to have these developmental delays. And so you see this thing we talk about in cog biology all the time, how science and humanity clash, and how when we have so much technology as humans and we think we're superior to science, we're superior to species, you see that science comes back and proves that the natural world is going to trump us. And this has made a huge political splash, especially, and if you follow, the Michigan primary was last night, and Flint was really, I don't want to say the only, but the main discussion on how elected officials are going to handle the Flint crisis. And so this leaves questions like, how many people are going to be sick? Are they going to fix it? What's going to happen in Flint? Is there going to be any responsibility? And that's where the political turmoil lies. And how severe will lead toxicity prove to be? And how are we going to respond to science? So for me, personally, reflecting on my research, you can probably tell that I think what happened here is extremely unfortunate and terrible. Put any terrible word in it, it's going to fix. It's unjust. But as scientists, which is what I stand up here to be, we have to look at it from the standpoint that we have 100,000 people that have been exposed to potent lead, high levels of lead. And if we want to move forward and make something positive, which is what I think the people of Flint ultimately deserve, we need to have scientists studying how we respond to lead. Hopefully a better treatment plan comes out of this, and really as people, especially like yours and I, we're going to grow up with the youth of Flint. So we're going to see how they're growing, how their brain is developing after all this exposure, and we're really going to face economic hardships because they're going to have to put a lot of funding into fixing everything in Flint and then helping all people who have really
Did anybody die from the
So the question is, has anyone died? So right now, it's still the adjustment period where the state just took responsibility. There's actually, if anyone's wondering about the political side of it, the people of Flint are pushing for the governor to resign. So that's because 9 people have passed away from Legionnaire's disease, which is a bacterial infection. However, they've investigated that it could be connected to the lead poisoning. So yeah, people have died in Flint. They can't say, yeah, it's definitely because of the lead poisoning. And you have to also remember, this was prolonged exposure, and it's asymptomatic, and these levels decrease in the body and come back up, and there's no way to really know what's going on for sure yet.
So I've actually read a lot about this as well. I read that it is, you said that it's damaging, sex cells and whether or not, I heard it was that they're now looking at it's accountable for a host of premature deliveries of what is that word?
Reproductive?
Yes. Also, no, not reproductive. Miscarriages, like many so there's people who've had 2 or 3 miscarriages, and they didn't understand why it was happening, and now, 18 months later, they're like, all right, well, the water, and so now that they've all come out with the water. But what I wanted to ask with you, because I think that is heartbreaking, I'm wondering, I had read that the EPA had done water tests and knew the water was bad, and then waited 6 months before they shared that with the government, who then waited another 6 months before they shared it with the community. Is that true?
So There was a doctor, her name's Dr. Mona Hana-Atisha. She's the first person that really raised the red flag about lead toxicity because she was seeing a lot of high levels of lead in kids' blood. And she basically came publicly and said, I think there's an issue. And so the EPA did testing, but the government refused to believe what she said. They ignored her, pretty much discredited her as a doctor. And then 6 months later, this is what we're talking about, 6 months later, they're like, oh wait, there's actually an issue. So it took the government a really long time to respond. And I think that is what's causing a lot of the frustration in a really impoverished area already. And interestingly enough, going off of that, just last week there was a lot of emails released from the governor's office. His name's Governor Rick Snyder, and him and people in his office had knowledge of the lead toxicity that was in the state and didn't do anything for a really, really long time.
And then the other thing I saw, which was, and again, it was probably like a news flash that I now caught off CNN, but it was like, one family, how much water do you use in a day? And they were going through like 132 bottles of water because they had to buy all this water now to replace the water you can't drink. And so just thinking of that, like just something as simple as, you can't wash your hair in that because it will go into your skin. You can't boil pasta. You can't, like, there's,
Yeah, so
it's pervasive, I think.
I'll go back to the picture of the tap water, and I think that when I explain it, something really interesting to remember is that this is their faucet water. So this isn't like what's coming out of the fridge to drink. This is what they're bathing in. This is what they're using to cook. This is what they're drinking. Everything that you use water for in the day, this is what it's had. If you just type in Flint on Google, you see pictures like this everywhere. There was a story I actually read about a family who the mother was bathing her son, and she was pretty much fed up because every time she bathed her son, there was a brown line across his stomach, and she said something is wrong with the water. She was ignored for a really long time as well.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.